A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, "I'm sorry, Mom." What he found broke his heart. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the story. The cold air cut through the city streets like a knife, as the glow of streetlights barely illuminated the path ahead. Caleb Whitmore, a millionaire CEO, walked alone, his eyes fixed straight ahead, lost in thought. The holiday cheer of the season seemed like a world away, a far-off dream that no longer mattered to him. His mind raced with endless meetings, boardrooms, and financial reports. But tonight, it felt all like background noise, distant and hollow. The sound of his shoes tapping against the sidewalk was the only thing he could hear as he made his way down the street. As he walked, the world around him buzzed with life, people laughing, holiday music filling the air, families gathered in warm homes. But Caleb felt none of it. His heart, once filled with ambition and success, now lay empty, a void too deep for even his wealth to fill. Then, just as he passed a small park bench, something caught his attention. Two figures huddled together in the shadow of a tree. At first, he thought they were just a couple of homeless people, trying to shield themselves from the cold. But as he stepped closer, he froze. It was a little girl, no more than 6 or 7, her thin coat barely keeping her warm. She sat on the bench, clutching something tightly to her chest, her face pale and streaked with tears. The baby she held, wrapped in a tattered blanket, shivered violently, its cries barely audible above the wind. Caleb stopped in his tracks, his heart suddenly pounding in his chest. Something about the sight of the girl, so small, so vulnerable, struck him with a force he couldn't explain. As he approached, he heard her whisper, her voice barely a breath in the cold night air. "I'm sorry, Mum." The words were so soft, so full of pain, they seemed to hang in the air, freezing everything around them. Caleb bent down, his breath catching in his throat. He could see the fear in her eyes, the kind of fear that only comes from a child who has known too much pain. Without thinking, he knelt beside her, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer than he expected. The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear. But then something shifted. She didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, she whispered again, "I'm sorry, Mom." Caleb's heart twisted as he looked down at the baby in her arms. The poor child was barely conscious, shivering uncontrollably. He had no idea what had happened to them, but he knew one thing: they were in danger. Without hesitation, he scooped both the little girl and the baby into his arms. "I'm not going to let anyone hurt you," he said, his voice steady, though his own emotions were a whirlwind. The city around him continued on as if nothing had happened. But for Caleb, everything had changed in that moment. He rushed to his car, the cold air biting at his face as he carefully placed the children in the back seat. He didn't know where he was taking them yet, but he knew he had to help. He couldn't just walk away. As the car sped through the city, Caleb's mind raced. Who were these children? What had happened to them? And most of all, why did he feel this deep, unshakable sense of responsibility to protect them? The answers were just beyond his reach, but one thing was certain: he couldn't let them slip away. He was their only hope, and he wouldn't let them down. Asterisk, asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, "I'm sorry, Mom." What he found broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. Caleb drove through the snow-covered streets, the headlights cutting through the darkness, the city's noise fading into the background. He glanced at the rearview mirror, seeing the little girl and her baby sister, now wrapped in a warm blanket, huddled in the back seat. The baby was still shivering slightly, but her breathing had become more regular, and the girl's eyes, though tired, looked less fearful. Caleb's mind raced. He had no idea who they were, or how they had ended up alone in the cold. But one thing was clear. They needed help, and he was their only chance. The drive felt endless, but finally, Caleb arrived at a small hospital on the edge of town. The flashing lights of the emergency room greeted him like a lifeline. He parked the car, his hands trembling slightly as he turned off the engine. As he opened the door and carefully lifted the little girl into his arms, the cold air hit him like a wall. The streets were eerily quiet, the snow falling softly around them as he rushed inside. The emergency room was a flurry of activity doctors and nurses moving quickly from one patient to the next, the sound of beeping monitors filling the air. Caleb approached the front desk, his heart pounding in his chest. "Please, she needs help," he said urgently, his voice shaking. The nurse looked up at him, her expression a mix of surprise and concern. "What happened?" she asked. Caleb glanced down at the little girl in his arms, her face pale and drawn. "I found her and her baby sister outside. They were abandoned. She's been through something. I don't know what, but she's hurt. Please, help her." The nurse nodded quickly, signaling to a doctor who immediately came over. Caleb was led to a waiting area, his heart heavy with worry as he watched the doctors work on the little girl. Time seemed to stand still as he sat there, staring at the door through which they had taken her. His mind raced. Who would leave these children alone in the cold? What kind of person could do such a thing? As he sat in the sterile waiting room, Caleb couldn't help but think about his own life. He had everything: money, success, a name that was known across the country. But none of it mattered now. In that moment, sitting in a cold hospital waiting room, he realized how empty his life had been. He had worked his entire life to build an empire, but in doing so, he had lost the very thing that gave life meaning: human connection. A nurse eventually came to speak with him, breaking his thoughts. "She's stable now," the nurse said softly. "She's a little shaken up, but she'll be okay." Caleb let out a sigh of relief, his shoulders sagging as the weight lifted off him. "Thank you," he whispered. The nurse smiled, but there was a sadness in her eyes. "We've got her in a room. We're running some tests, but she's lucky you found her." Caleb nodded, feeling a lump rise in his throat. The girl was lucky he found her, but he couldn't help but feel that, in some strange way, it was he who had been saved tonight. The nurse paused for a moment before continuing. "She kept asking for her mom. She said her name was Ava." Ava. The name hit Caleb like a punch to the gut. He didn't know why, but it felt like he had heard that name before. The nurse saw the recognition in his eyes and asked, "Do you know her?" Caleb swallowed hard, shaking his head. "No, but I feel like I should." He couldn't explain it, but the name Ava felt familiar, as if it had been haunting him for years. He had no idea what it meant, but he knew one thing: he couldn't walk away. As the nurse led him to the room where Ava was resting, Caleb's mind swirled with questions. But for now, all he could do was sit by her side, watching over her like a guardian. The little girl, who had been so lost and frightened just hours ago, now seemed peaceful. But Caleb knew the road ahead would be long. Ava's story was only beginning, and so was his own. He wasn't just here to help her. Somehow, she was going to change his life forever. Asterisk. Asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, "I'm sorry, Mom." What he found broke his heart. Asterisk. Asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with today's story. Caleb sat in the sterile hospital room, the bright white lights casting a cold glow over everything. Ava, the little girl he had rescued, was now lying in the bed, a soft blanket pulled up to her chin. She was asleep, but the faintest twitch of her hand made Caleb sit up straighter. He had stayed with her through the night, watching over her, making sure she was safe. The hospital staff had been kind, but Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to do more. The nurse had told him Ava's injuries were mostly minor, but the emotional scars would take much longer to heal. He couldn't imagine what this child had been through. She had whispered over and over again, "I'm sorry, Mom," before finally falling asleep. Those words echoed in his mind, haunting him. What kind of life had she lived? What kind of pain had she endured? His thoughts were interrupted when a soft voice broke the silence. "She's awake," the nurse said as she entered the room, a gentle smile on her face. Caleb stood up, his heart heavy as he looked at the little girl. Ava's eyes were still clouded with confusion, but when she saw him, a flicker of recognition passed over her face. "Are you my new daddy?" she asked in a whisper, her voice hoarse from the cold and the tears she had cried. The question hit Caleb harder than he expected. He froze for a moment, unsure of how to respond. He wasn't her father. And yet, in that moment, he felt something stirring deep within him, something he hadn't felt in years. A sense of protectiveness, a sense of responsibility. "No, sweetheart," Caleb said softly, sitting down next to her bed. "I'm not your daddy, but I'll make sure you're safe. I promise you that." Ava's small hands gripped the edge of the blanket, her eyes wide and searching, as if she were trying to understand whether he was telling the truth. "Are you going to take me home?" she asked, her voice small and vulnerable. Caleb's heart ached at the sight of her. "I'm going to help you, Ava," he said, his voice steady. "I'll make sure you're taken care of. I'm not going anywhere." The nurse stepped forward, gently placing a hand on Ava's shoulder. "We'll need to do a few more tests and get some details about her background. But for now, she's safe," the nurse said. Caleb nodded, still unable to fully process what had happened. His life had been so structured, so focused on business and success, that he had never made room for anything else. And now, in this hospital room, he realized that this little girl had somehow brought him back to life. The nurse left them alone, and Caleb sat quietly, watching Ava as she drifted off to sleep again. He couldn't help but feel that his world was shifting. The loneliness that had consumed him for so long was starting to fade, replaced by something he couldn't name. He stayed by her side for hours, his mind racing with questions. Who was Ava? Where had she come from? Why had she been abandoned? He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story than met the eye. But one thing was clear. She needed him. And he wasn't going to walk away. He had been given a second chance, not just to help her, but to help himself. As the night passed, Caleb made a promise to himself. He would do whatever it took to help Ava heal. She had lost everything, but he was going to make sure she never had to feel alone again. Asterisk, asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, "I'm sorry, Mom." What he found broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with today's story. The days following Ava's arrival at the hospital were a blur for Caleb. He couldn't stop thinking about her, about the look in her eyes, the fear that had been so palpable. Even as she was healing physically, Caleb knew that the true battle was only just beginning. She had been through something no child should ever have to experience, and he couldn't help but feel responsible for helping her find peace again. Caleb visited her every day, sitting by her bedside and speaking softly to her. But there were still so many unanswered questions. Ava hardly spoke. Her eyes would dart around, as if waiting for something or someone to appear. Occasionally, she would whisper, "I'm sorry, Mom," but would quickly fall silent again. It was as if she had forgotten how to trust, how to feel safe. Caleb had the sense that there was more to her story, a history that she wasn't ready to share. Yet, despite her silence, there was a bond growing between them. Caleb couldn't explain it, but something about her vulnerability and her brokenness made him feel protective. He was determined to help her, but he also realized that in doing so, he was also helping himself. The emptiness he had felt for so long was slowly being replaced with something he hadn't felt in years' purpose. It was a feeling he had lost somewhere along the way in his pursuit of wealth and success. But now it was slowly creeping back in. One evening, as Caleb sat beside her, Ava finally spoke, her voice small and trembling. "Where is my mommy?" she asked, her eyes searching his face. Caleb's heart sank. He had been dreading this moment, but he knew it was inevitable. "I don't know, sweetheart," he said softly, "but I'm going to help you find her. Okay? You're not alone anymore." Ava nodded, but the fear never left her eyes. Caleb knew that the road ahead would be long, and there would be many moments when he would feel helpless. But one thing was certain. He couldn't let her go. He wasn't sure yet how he could help her find her mother, but he knew he had to try. Over the next few days, Caleb worked tirelessly with the authorities to search for Ava's family. He found out that her mother had been involved in a dangerous situation, and Ava had been caught in the middle. The more Caleb learned, the more his heart broke for her. But he also knew that, whatever had happened, he couldn't let her go back to that life. He made a decision. He would not let her return to a home filled with fear and uncertainty. He was going to adopt her, no matter what it took. Caleb spent hours filling out paperwork, meeting with lawyers, and ensuring that everything was in place. It was a process that seemed never-ending, but he was determined. He couldn't let this little girl slip through his fingers. Meanwhile, Ava's condition slowly improved. She started to speak more, though she still wasn't fully comfortable with anyone. Caleb never pushed her. He let her take her time, never rushing her to open up. The most important thing was that she felt safe, and with Caleb's quiet presence, she began to let her guard down, little by little. It wasn't easy. There were days when Ava would cry out for her mother in her sleep, and Caleb would sit by her side, holding her hand, offering what comfort he could. But in those quiet moments, he saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. It was as if, for the first time in a long while, she believed that maybe, just maybe, she could have a future filled with love and safety. One afternoon, Caleb took Ava to a small park near the hospital. It was a crisp autumn day, the air cool, but not too cold. He watched as she cautiously approached a swing, her small hands gripping the chains tightly as she tentatively lifted her feet off the ground. Caleb stood a few feet away, watching her, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. It was a simple moment, but to Caleb, it was everything. For the first time, Ava seemed to be finding a little piece of joy, a little piece of freedom. And for Caleb, it was a reminder that life, no matter how broken, could be repaired one step at a time. As the days passed, Caleb continued to work with the authorities, determined to find out what had happened to Ava's mother. But no matter the outcome, one thing was clear. He had already made up his mind. He was going to be the father she needed. And with that promise, he felt something inside him heal. The road ahead would be long, but Caleb no longer felt alone. He had Ava now, and together, they would find their way to a new life, one filled with hope and love. Asterisk, asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, "I'm sorry, Mom." What he found broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with today's story. The days seemed to blend together as Caleb worked tirelessly to navigate the legalities of adopting Ava. His life, once focused on deals and deadlines, now revolved around ensuring that Ava would never face the fear and loneliness she had known before. The more time he spent with her, the more his heart opened to the possibility that he could be the father she needed. Ava, still fragile, was slowly finding comfort in the steady rhythm of Caleb's presence. She would come to him for reassurance, her small hand seeking his in moments of uncertainty. She wasn't speaking much about her past, but there were glimmers of trust forming between them, like the faintest light breaking through the darkness. Caleb had set up a small room for her at his penthouse, though it still felt foreign to both of them. It wasn't home yet, but he hoped that over time, it would become just that. He filled the room with toys, books, and soft blankets, things that would make her feel secure, even if just for a moment. One morning, Caleb woke up early and went to Ava's room. He found her sitting by the window, staring out at the city below. It was a rare moment of stillness, and he could see how she was trying to process everything that had happened. Her face, usually so full of anxiety, had softened a little, and for the first time, Caleb wondered if she might begin to believe that she deserved something better. "Ava?" he asked softly, walking into the room. She turned to him, her eyes a little more focused than usual. "Do you want to go out today?" Caleb asked. He had been trying to ease her into a more normal routine, taking her to parks, museums, or even just for walks around the city. She nodded quietly, her small hand reaching out for his. Caleb smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. This was progress. As they walked through the park later that day, Ava seemed to relax more, her eyes taking in the world around her. She noticed the ducks swimming in the pond, the people jogging along the paths, and the children playing with their parents. For a brief moment, Caleb saw a spark of curiosity in her eyes, something he hadn't seen in a long time. "Can we feed the ducks?" she asked hesitantly, her voice still soft but filled with hope. Caleb laughed, a sound that felt foreign to him, but also strangely comforting. Of course, sweetheart, he said, pulling a small bag of breadcrumbs from his coat pocket. They sat by the water's edge, feeding the ducks together. And for the first time since he had met her, Caleb allowed himself to feel a sense of peace. Ava wasn't the same broken little girl she had been when he first found her. She was slowly starting to heal, to trust again. And though the road ahead would be long, Caleb knew that this was the beginning of something new. After they left the park, Caleb took Ava to a small ice cream shop nearby. It wasn't a big gesture, but it was the kind of simple act that meant the world to a child like her. She had never tasted anything like it before, and her eyes lit up as she licked the cold treat. "This is so good," she whispered, smiling up at him. Caleb couldn't help but smile back. It was in these small moments, these simple gestures of love, that he realized how much he had been missing in his own life. As they sat there, enjoying their ice cream, Caleb made a promise to himself he would not let Ava down. No matter what happened, he would be the father she deserved. As the day came to a close and they returned to the apartment, Caleb could feel the weight of the world lifting off his shoulders. Ava, though still carrying the scars of her past, was beginning to see the possibility of a different future. And in that moment, Caleb knew that he had already found something far more important than success or wealth. He had found the family he never knew he needed. Asterisk, asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, "I'm sorry, Mom." What he found broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with today's story. Caleb spent the next few weeks learning more about Ava. And as she opened up to him little by little, he started to see glimpses of the little girl she used to be before all the pain. They were making progress. She was more comfortable with him now, and the fear in her eyes had lessened over time. But Caleb knew that healing wasn't something that would happen overnight. It would take time, trust, and a lot of love. One evening after dinner, Caleb sat across from Ava at the kitchen table. He was watching her eat, noticing how much more at ease she seemed. There was a quiet joy in the way she now looked at the world, like she was slowly learning to feel safe again. But there were still moments of sadness, moments when the past crept back into her mind. Ava was playing with her food, pushing the mashed potatoes around her plate, when she suddenly spoke up. "Do you think my mom's going to come back?" Her voice was small, fragile. Caleb's heart sank. He had been hoping to avoid this question for a little longer, but now it was here, and he had to face it. "Ava," he said gently, "I know you miss your mom. I can't promise that she will come back, but I can promise you that you are not alone anymore. You have me." Ava's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She simply nodded, a small, sad smile forming on her lips. Caleb reached across the table and took her hand. "You don't have to be scared anymore. We'll figure things out. Together." The conversation left Caleb feeling heavy. He wanted so badly to fix everything for her, to take away the pain, but he knew that wasn't possible. What he could offer her was his love, his protection, and a safe place where she could grow, heal, and find her way. The days went by, and Ava's transformation was slow but steady. Caleb had hired a therapist to help Ava process her emotions. someone who specialized in trauma. They spent hours working on trust, safety, and understanding her feelings. Caleb was by her side every step of the way, never pushing her, but always there when she needed him. One afternoon, after a therapy session, Caleb took Ava to the park. It had been a particularly tough day for her, and he could see the weight of her emotions. They sat on a bench, watching the other children run around, playing tag, laughing. Ava watched them with a quiet curiosity. Caleb could sense that she wanted to join them, but something held her back. He turned to her, his voice soft. "You know, you can join them if you want. It's okay to have fun, Ava." She looked up at him, her eyes wide. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared of what?" Caleb asked. "Scared that if I start having fun, something bad will happen." Caleb's heart broke at the raw honesty in her voice. He could understand her fear, but he also knew that life wasn't just about surviving the bad times. It was about finding joy and peace in the good moments, even when the past still lingered. "Ava," Caleb said gently, "I'm right here. You don't have to be scared. You can enjoy yourself. It's okay to feel happy again." There was a long silence as Ava seemed to process his words. Finally, she stood up and walked slowly toward the other children. Caleb stayed behind, watching her carefully, but giving her the space she needed. He saw her hesitate at first, but then she joined the game of tag. For the first time, he saw her truly smile, a smile that reached her eyes, one that said she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have a life filled with happiness. Caleb sat there for a while, watching her run and laugh with the other kids. In that moment, he realized something she was healing. And while the road ahead was still long, they had come so far. He felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. He was so glad that he had stepped into her life, that he had been there when she needed someone. He was the one who found her, but in many ways, she had found him, too. Ava wasn't the only one who was healing. Caleb had found a new sense of purpose, a reason to live beyond work and success. He had found a family, a daughter who had shown him what it meant to truly care, to love unconditionally. And with every passing day, he knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Asterisk, asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, "I'm sorry, Mom." What he found broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with today's story. Caleb stood by the window, looking out at the city skyline. It was a peaceful evening, the kind that made him forget for a moment the weight of the past few months. Ava had made so much progress, and as she played in her room, laughing softly as she built a small tower out of blocks, Caleb couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The journey hadn't been easy, but they were finally starting to find their rhythm. Still, there was a lingering sense of unease in Caleb's chest. He had done everything in his power to protect Ava, to give her a new life. But there were still so many unanswered questions about her past, about the life she had left behind. He knew it was only a matter of time before the truth would come to light, and he dreaded what that might mean. Just then, the doorbell rang, pulling Caleb from his thoughts. He walked to the door, opening it to find a woman standing there. She was holding a folder, and the look on her face was serious, even somber. "Mr. Whitmore?" she asked, her voice steady but warm. "I'm Detective Rachel Evans. I've been working on the case regarding Ava's mother, Do you have a moment to speak? Caleb's heart skipped a beat. He had been expecting this, but he wasn't ready for the conversation. He nodded and stepped aside, allowing her to enter. Please, come in, Caleb said, his voice strained. I've been hoping we could finally get some answers. Detective Evans sat down across from him, placing the folder on the table. She opened it slowly, as if weighing her words carefully. We've made some progress in the investigation, she said. Unfortunately, the news isn't good. Caleb's stomach tightened. What do you mean? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ava's mother, from what we've gathered, was involved in a dangerous situation, Detective Evans continued. She was trying to escape an abusive relationship and had gone into hiding. Unfortunately, we've learned that she was found recently dead. The words hit Caleb like a punch to the gut. He felt the room spin, the air suddenly thin. He hadn't prepared for this. I'm sorry, Detective Evans said softly. I know this is difficult to hear. Ava's mother wasn't a part of her life for some time, but we've been doing everything we can to find her and to make sure Ava's taken care of. Caleb felt a wave of grief wash over him. He had known, deep down, that Ava's mother wasn't coming back, but hearing the truth was a different kind of pain. The woman who had given Ava life, who had been the source of her pain, was gone. And now Ava was left to navigate this world on her own. What happens now? Caleb asked, his voice shaking. We'll make sure Ava's taken care of, Detective Evans assured him. We've already started the paperwork for her to be placed in your custody. She's safe with you, Mr. Whitmore. Caleb nodded, but the weight of the situation still pressed down on him. Ava had already lost so much. And now, hearing that her mother was gone for good, he felt a deep sorrow for her. He could feel the weight of responsibility growing heavier on his shoulders. But there was also a flicker of something else: determination. He wouldn't let Ava slip through his fingers. He wouldn't let her face this world alone. Thank you, Caleb said, his voice firm. I will take care of her. She's my daughter now. Detective Evans gave him a nod of approval, standing up to leave. We'll be in touch with the final paperwork, but I trust you'll do right by her. Caleb stood up with her, his mind racing. As the door closed behind Detective Evans, he was left alone in the quiet of his apartment, the weight of his promise to Ava settling deeper in his chest. He wasn't just her guardian now. He was her father. He would be the one to give her a new life, to protect her from the shadows of her past. And though the road ahead was uncertain, Caleb knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going to back down. As he walked back to the living room, Ava looked up at him, her small face lighting up with a smile. Daddy, look, she said, showing him her tower of blocks, her voice filled with excitement. Caleb's heart ached with love for her. That's beautiful, sweetheart, he said, kneeling down to her level. He wrapped his arms around her and pulled her into a hug, the weight of the world falling away for a moment. You know, we're going to be okay, Caleb whispered. Ava's arms tightened around him, her small body trembling slightly. But for the first time in a long time, Caleb felt the peace of knowing that he had done the right thing. No matter what came next, they would face it together. Asterisk, asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, I'm sorry, Mom. What he found broke his heart. Asterisk. Asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with today's story. As the days passed, Caleb and Ava began to settle into their new life together. The routine was still new to both of them, but it was starting to feel more natural. Ava had a new school to go to, and Caleb made sure she was involved in activities that would help her grow. He spent time every day with her, playing games, reading stories, and helping her with her homework. Despite the challenges, Caleb began to see glimpses of the joyful, carefree little girl that she had once been. Yet, there were still moments of hesitation, moments when Ava would close off, retreating into herself. Caleb knew she had a long way to go before the scars of her past would fully heal. But he was patient. He knew that healing couldn't be rushed. One evening, after dinner, Ava was sitting on the couch, her legs tucked under her, flipping through a book. Caleb sat down beside her, his eyes scanning the page she was reading. "How's it going?" he asked, his voice gentle. Ava looked up at him, a small smile on her face. "Good," she said softly. "I like reading." Caleb smiled back, feeling a wave of warmth. It was moments like this that reminded him of how far they had come. "I'm glad," Caleb replied. "If you ever want to read something else, let me know. I'll get it for you." Ava nodded, but then her smile faded. Do you think I'll ever see my mom again?" The question hit Caleb hard, as he had been bracing himself for this. He had known it would come, but hearing it from her made it all the more real. He took a deep breath before responding, trying to find the right words. "Ava, I know you miss your mom," he said softly, "and I'm really sorry that you're going through this. But I want you to know that I'm here for you. You're not alone." Ava's eyes filled with tears, and Caleb could see the pain in her heart. But I don't want to forget her," she whispered. "I don't want to forget her, but I don't want to be sad all the time either." Caleb's heart broke for her. He could see how much she was struggling, torn between holding on to the memory of her mother and finding a way to move forward. "Ava," Caleb said, gently brushing a strand of hair away from her face, "it's okay to remember her. You don't have to forget. You can carry her in your heart. And that's something no one can take away from you." Ava looked up at him, her eyes still filled with sadness. "But how do I not feel sad all the time?" she asked quietly. Caleb thought for a moment, then smiled softly. "You don't have to do it alone. You have me. And you have a whole life ahead of you, filled with new memories, new joys. It's okay to have both the love you have for your mom and the happiness you can have here with me." Ava's eyes searched his face, and for a moment, Caleb wasn't sure if she understood. But then she nodded, her lips trembling as if she were trying to hold back tears. Caleb pulled her into a gentle hug, holding her close. "You are loved, Ava. You are safe now. And that's all that matters." Ava buried her face in his chest, the tears finally breaking free. Caleb held her for as long as she needed, letting her cry out the pain that she had been carrying for so long. It was a small moment, but it was a breakthrough. It was the beginning of Ava learning how to process her grief, how to find peace with her past while still embracing the future. The next morning, Caleb took Ava to the park again. The sun was shining brightly, and the air was warm with the promise of a new day. This time, Ava was more confident. She ran ahead, laughing as she played with the other children, her earlier sadness forgotten for a while. Caleb watched her from a distance, his heart swelling with pride. He knew that they had a long road ahead, that there would be more challenges to face, more tears to shed. But in that moment, as he watched Ava smiling and playing, Caleb felt a sense of hope that he hadn't felt in a long time. He wasn't just helping Ava heal, she was helping him heal too. They were a family now, and no matter what the future held, Caleb was ready to face it with her by his side. Asterisk, asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, "I'm sorry, Mom." What he found broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with today's story. It had been a few months since Caleb had officially adopted Ava, and things were beginning to feel like they were settling into a new rhythm. Their days were filled with laughter, shared meals, and the quiet moments that gradually formed the foundation of their new life together. But despite all the progress, Caleb could still sense a hesitation in Ava, as if part of her was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. She had started to flourish in her new environment, making friends at school, smiling more often, and even helping around the house. But there were still moments when she would retreat into herself, moments when her past would rise to the surface, and it was clear that some wounds would take much longer to heal. One afternoon, Caleb was sitting at the kitchen table when Ava came running into the room, her face bright with excitement. "Daddy, I have something to tell you," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. Caleb put down the papers he was working on and smiled warmly at her. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked. "I got the lead role in the school play," Ava shouted, practically bouncing on her heels. Caleb's heart swelled with pride. He had always hoped that Ava would find something that she was passionate about, something that would help her build confidence and connect with other kids her age. "That's amazing, Ava," Caleb said, standing up and walking over to her. "I'm so proud of you. When is the play?" Ava's face lit up. "In 2 weeks. Can you come, Daddy?" Caleb didn't hesitate for a moment. "Of course I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it for the world." For the next few days, Ava spent hours practicing her lines, and Caleb watched as her confidence grew. She was no longer the quiet, withdrawn girl he had found that cold night in the park. She was becoming a little girl again, full of dreams and hopes for the future. But as the date of the play approached, Caleb began to notice something that worried him. Ava had started to act distant again. She would retreat to her room more often, and when Caleb tried to talk to her, she seemed distracted, like she was carrying something heavy in her heart. One evening, as they were having dinner together, Caleb decided it was time to address the change in her behavior. "Ava," he said gently, setting his fork down, "you've been a little quiet lately. Is everything okay?" Ava looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of uncertainty and fear. "I don't think I can do it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't think I can be in the play. What if I mess up? What if everyone laughs at me?" Caleb felt a pang in his chest as he listened to her. He knew that her fear wasn't just about the play. It was about being vulnerable, about taking a step forward into the unknown, something she had been avoiding ever since her world had been turned upside down. "Ava, listen to me," Caleb said softly, reaching across the table and taking her hand in his. "It's okay to be scared, but you don't have to face this alone. I'm here, and I'll be there for you, no matter what happens. The play is about having fun and expressing yourself. It's not about being perfect. Do you remember how you felt when you first started making new friends at school? You were nervous then too. But look at you now." Ava nodded, her lips trembling. "But what if they don't like me? What if I mess up my lines?" Caleb smiled reassuringly. "Everyone makes mistakes, sweetheart. What matters is that you try, and I know you can do it. You've already made so much progress, and I'm so proud of you." Ava wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. You really think I can do it? She asked, her voice filled with doubt. I know you can, Caleb replied firmly. And no matter what happens, I'll be there to cheer you on. You've already won, just by trying. Ava smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. But it was different now. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of relief. The next 2 weeks flew by, and Caleb was there every day, helping Ava practice her lines, encouraging her, and reminding her that she was capable. When the night of the play arrived, Caleb sat in the front row, his heart racing with excitement. Ava's turn finally came, and she stepped onto the stage, her face pale with nerves, but her posture strong. As she began to speak her lines, Caleb could see the transformation in her. She was no longer the scared little girl who had struggled to trust anyone. She was confident, shining brightly under the stage lights. When the play ended, and the audience erupted into applause, Caleb was on his feet, clapping the loudest. Ava ran into his arms, her face flushed with excitement. I did it, Daddy, she exclaimed, her eyes shining. Caleb held her tight, his heart swelling with pride. You did it, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. As they left the theater that night, Caleb realized just how much Ava had grown. She wasn't just learning how to be a child again. She was learning how to be brave. And in that moment, Caleb knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. He had kept his promise to protect her, to help her heal, and to give her the life she deserved. Asterisk, asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, I'm sorry, Mom. What he found broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with today's story. Caleb watched Ava as she sat in the living room, coloring quietly in her notebook. The room was filled with a calm silence, a contrast to the chaos and noise of the world outside. For the first time in months, he felt as though they were truly home. It wasn't just the physical space that had become a home for them, but the emotional safety that Ava had started to feel. It was something Caleb had been working towards. And now, more than ever, he could see the change in her. He remembered the first day he had brought her to his apartment. She was withdrawn, barely speaking, and full of uncertainty. Now, as she sat in front of him, so absorbed in her drawings, he saw the spark of a child who was starting to trust again. But despite her progress, there were still shadows that lingered. And Caleb knew they weren't entirely gone. He could still see the moments when Ava's mind would wander, when the ghosts of her past would cloud her eyes. He knew it would take more than time for her to forget what she had been through. Yet, he was determined to help her through it, every step of the way. One evening after dinner, as they sat on the couch together, Caleb noticed Ava looking out the window, lost in thought. He knew she had something on her mind, and after a few moments of silence, he decided to speak up. Ava, is everything okay? He asked, his voice gentle. She looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of emotions. She opened her mouth to speak, but hesitated. Caleb could tell she was holding something back. It's okay to talk to me, he said softly, reaching out to take her hand. Whatever it is, I'm here. Ava's small hand tightened around his. I don't want to be scared anymore, she whispered, her voice trembling. Caleb's heart ached as he heard the words. She wasn't just talking about the fear of the present, but the deep-rooted fear that had been instilled in her over the years. It was the fear of never being safe, of always waiting for something bad to happen. Caleb squeezed her hand gently, his voice steady. Ava, I want you to know something. You are safe here. I will never let anything happen to you. Ava looked up at him, her eyes filled with doubt. But what if something happens to you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. I promise you, nothing is going to happen to me, he said, his voice firm with conviction. And if something does, I will always love you, no matter what. That won't change. Ava nodded slowly, but Caleb could see the worry still in her eyes. He understood. She had been through too much to fully believe that things would stay good forever. But he knew that her healing was a process, and it would take time before she fully trusted that she was safe. The following weeks were filled with small victories. Ava began to open up more, sharing bits of her past. Not in a rush, but in little moments that showed she was learning to trust again. She spoke about the time she spent with her mother before everything fell apart, about the memories that haunted her, and the fear that she had carried for so long. Caleb listened to her patiently, offering comfort and understanding without pushing her to talk more than she was ready. And with every conversation, Caleb could see her slowly releasing the weight she had been carrying. One day, while they were walking in the park, Ava turned to Caleb and asked, Do you think I'm ready to let go of the past? Caleb stopped walking, looking down at her. Her question, simple yet profound, struck him deeply. It was the first time she had asked something like that. It meant that, in her own way, she was realizing that moving forward wasn't about forgetting. It was about learning to live with her past while embracing a future full of possibilities. I think you're ready when you say you are, Caleb said, bending down to her level. It's not about rushing. It's about taking it one step at a time and knowing that you're not alone. Ava's eyes softened as she nodded, taking in his words. It was in that moment that Caleb realized that Ava was ready not just to let go of the past, but to build a future. They didn't have all the answers, and they weren't fully healed. But they had each other. And that was enough for now. As they continued their walk through the park, Caleb looked at Ava with a sense of pride. She had come so far, and though there would still be hard days ahead, he knew that together they could face anything. Caleb's heart swelled with gratitude as he realized that this journey wasn't just about saving Ava. It was about finding redemption and healing for both of them. He had been given a second chance not just to be a father, but to create a family, one built on love, trust, and the promise of a better tomorrow. Asterisk, asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, I'm sorry, Mom. What he found broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with today's story. Caleb was sitting in the living room, the soft light of the evening sun streaming through the windows. He was watching Ava as she played with her new toy, a small smile tugging at his lips. Things were peaceful now, quieter than they had been in a long time. But Caleb knew that the calm was fragile. He could still feel the weight of the past hovering over them both. The shadows that Ava couldn't yet escape. He could see it in her eyes sometimes. The flicker of pain, the hesitation when something reminded her of her old life. But she was getting better. She was becoming the child she was always meant to be. Caleb had been doing his best to keep things light for Ava, filling their home with laughter and joy. Yet, deep down, he knew that there was something she still hadn't shared. It wasn't that she didn't trust him. He could see it in her small gestures, her willingness to be open. But there was a piece of her that she had locked away, a part of her that she didn't want to talk about. Caleb decided that he would wait for her to be ready. He wasn't going to rush her. He understood that healing was a slow process, and he wasn't going to force it. He was willing to give her as much time as she needed. That evening, after Ava had gone to bed, Caleb sat alone on the couch, thinking about the long journey ahead. He had never expected his life to change in this way, to become the father figure that Ava needed. But now, it felt like it was the most natural thing in the world. It wasn't always easy, but every step they took together made it feel more real. Just as he was lost in thought, he heard a soft knock at the door. Caleb stood up, wondering who it could be at this hour. When he opened the door, he was surprised to see Detective Evans standing on his doorstep, holding a file in her hand. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, her tone serious. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" Caleb stepped aside, letting her in. "Of course, what's going on?" He could tell from her expression that this wasn't a casual visit. "We've found something," she said, as she sat down at the kitchen table, opening the file in front of him. "It's about Ava's mother." Caleb's stomach tightened. He had been dreading this moment. He had known that the past would eventually catch up with them, but he wasn't prepared for what he might hear. "What have you found?" Caleb asked, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. "We've traced her movements before she disappeared," Detective Evans explained. "We've learned that she had been involved in a dangerous situation, one that ultimately led to her death." Caleb felt the air leave his lungs. "What happened?" he asked quietly, though he already feared the answer. "Ava's mother had been trying to get away from an abusive situation," the detective said. "She had gone into hiding, but things took a turn for the worse. We've confirmed that she passed away a few months ago." Caleb closed his eyes, the weight of the news settling over him. He had known that Ava's mother wasn't coming back, but hearing it confirmed, hearing about her death, was a crushing blow. He had hoped, at the very least, that Ava could have some closure, some chance to understand what had happened. But now, he realized that this was a chapter that would never be fully closed for her. Detective Evans continued. "Ava's mother tried to protect her from everything, but she was unable to escape. We've been in contact with Child Services to ensure Ava's future is secured." Caleb nodded slowly, his mind spinning. "So, what happens now?" he asked. "We'll be handling the official paperwork for her adoption," the detective said. "But I want to be clear. Mr. Whitmore, you're the one she needs. You're the one who's been there for her. We've already made arrangements for her to stay with you permanently." Caleb took a deep breath, feeling a surge of gratitude. Ava had been through so much. And now, in the face of all of this loss, he realized how much more he had to give. He had promised to protect her, and no matter what, he would keep that promise. "Thank you," Caleb said, his voice quiet but resolute. "I'll take care of her. I won't let anything happen to her." Detective Evans gave him a nod of approval. "I know you will. You've already done so much." As she left, Caleb stood there for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. He had never imagined that he would be the one to raise Ava, to be the father she needed. But now, with everything that had happened, there was no turning back. He had already made his choice, and it was the only one that mattered. He walked quietly to Ava's room, peeking inside. She was sound asleep, her small face peaceful for the moment. Caleb stood there for a long time, just watching her. This little girl, who had been through so much, who had lost so much, was now his responsibility. And as he stood in the doorway, he made a silent vow. No matter what came next, He would be there for her. He would help her heal, help her grow, and most importantly, he would love her. As the night stretched on, Caleb knew that he had been given something priceless, the chance to be a father, to be the family Ava had always needed. And he wasn't going to let that slip away. Asterisk, asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, "I'm sorry, Mom." What he found broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with today's story. The weeks following the detective's visit were filled with paperwork and preparations for Ava's future. Caleb's heart was heavy with everything he had learned, but he knew that the only thing that mattered now was Ava. He had promised to protect her, to be there for her, and he would keep that promise no matter what. Their bond had only grown stronger over the months, and Caleb could see the child she was becoming, one who laughed more freely, who trusted him more deeply, and who was starting to see the world through new eyes. Caleb was proud of how far they had come. Ava had been through so much already, but with every passing day, she seemed to grow stronger. Still, Caleb couldn't ignore the gnawing worry that lingered in his mind. He had always known that being a parent wasn't easy, and there were moments when he wasn't sure if he was doing enough for her. There were times when Ava would have nightmares, times when she would wake up crying for her mother, and Caleb would hold her close, whispering reassuring words until she fell back asleep. It was in those moments that Caleb realized just how much Ava still needed him, and just how far he would go to make sure she felt safe and loved. One evening, after putting Ava to bed, Caleb sat alone in the living room, lost in thought. He had always prided himself on his ability to handle any situation, to solve any problem, but nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing had prepared him for the responsibility of raising a child who had been through so much trauma. He was used to the world of business, where success was measured in profits and deals. But here, with Ava, success was measured in something far deeper: trust, love, and stability. Caleb knew he had to do more than just give Ava a roof over her head. He had to be the kind of father she needed, the kind of father who would be there for her, even when things were tough. The next morning, Caleb woke up early, as he always did. He made a pot of coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and stared at the papers in front of him. The adoption paperwork was almost complete, but there was still one final step before it would be official. Caleb knew that this moment would be a turning point in their lives. It was the moment when Ava would officially become his daughter, the moment when their family would be complete. He felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. He had never imagined his life would lead him here, but now that it had, he couldn't imagine his life without Ava. Just as he was about to finish the last form, he heard footsteps coming down the hall. Ava appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Good morning, Daddy," she said softly, a small smile on her face. Caleb smiled back, his heart warming at the sight of her. "Good morning, sweetheart," he replied. "Did you sleep well?" Ava nodded. "I had a dream," she said, her voice quiet. "A good dream." Caleb leaned back in his chair, his curiosity piqued. "What was it about?" he asked. Ava hesitated for a moment, her eyes thoughtful. "I was with Mommy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb's heart tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "And what were you doing?" he asked gently. Ava smiled faintly. We were playing together. We were happy. Caleb's heart swelled with emotion as he listened to her. It was clear that Ava still held on to the love she had for her mother, even though she knew deep down that her mother was gone. It was a love that would never fade, a love that would always be a part of her. Caleb took a deep breath and stood up. Ava, he said softly, I know you miss your mom, and I want you to know that it's okay to love her, and it's okay to remember her, but you're not alone anymore. I'm here for you, and I always will be. Ava looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. You mean it? She asked. Caleb nodded, kneeling down to her level. I mean it. You're my daughter now, and nothing will ever change that. Ava's face lit up with a bright, shy smile. Really? She asked, her voice full of hope. Really? Caleb said, his voice full of love. He pulled her into a warm hug, holding her tightly. For the first time in a long time, Ava's fear seemed to melt away, replaced by the sense of security that Caleb had worked so hard to give her. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Caleb realized that this was the moment when everything had truly changed. It wasn't just about the adoption or the paperwork. It was about the bond they shared, the trust they had built, and the love that had blossomed between them. Ava had found a new family, a new beginning, and Caleb had found a new purpose. Together, they had created something beautiful, something that no past pain could take away. And as Caleb stood there, holding his daughter, he knew that this was just the beginning of their journey, a journey filled with love, growth, and the promise of a brighter future. Asterisk, asterisk. A millionaire CEO heard a little girl whisper, I'm sorry, Mom. What he found broke his heart. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue with today's story. The days had turned into weeks, and Caleb had settled into a new rhythm with Ava. Their life together had become a mix of routine and new experiences, and despite the shadows that sometimes lingered, Caleb could see how much Ava had grown. She was thriving in ways he hadn't imagined possible when they first met. She was making friends at school, smiling more often, and even sharing little details about her day, something she had been reluctant to do in the beginning. Caleb watched her with a pride he couldn't explain. She was healing, and it was the most beautiful thing he had ever witnessed. Yet as time passed, there were still moments when Ava would retreat into herself. Caleb knew this wasn't something that would go away overnight. It was the echoes of her past, those deep wounds that she was still learning how to carry. But Caleb had made a promise to himself and to her that no matter what, he would be there for her. One afternoon after school, Caleb found Ava sitting on the porch, her legs pulled up to her chest, looking out at the garden. The light of the setting sun bathed the yard in a warm glow. But there was something in Ava's posture that told Caleb she wasn't at peace. He walked outside quietly, not wanting to startle her, and sat down beside her. Hey, kiddo, Caleb said softly, his voice gentle. Ava didn't immediately look at him. She simply nodded, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. Caleb waited for her to speak, knowing that when she was ready, she would. After a long pause, Ava finally turned to him. Daddy, she said quietly, sometimes I don't feel like I belong here, like I'm just pretending. Caleb's heart ached as he listened to her. He had feared that at some point, Ava might feel this way. as though she was just going through the motions, uncertain about where she truly fit in. He reached out and placed his hand on hers, offering her the reassurance she needed. "Ava," he said softly, "you belong here. You've always belonged here. This is your home, and you're my daughter. I know it's not always easy, but we're in this together. You don't have to pretend, sweetheart. Not with me." Ava looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "But what if I don't feel like I'm enough? What if I never feel like things are really okay?" Caleb sighed, wishing there was an easy answer, a way to make all of Ava's fears disappear. But he knew that healing didn't work like that. "Ava, you don't have to be perfect," he said, his voice steady. "None of us are. But what matters is that we keep moving forward. And I will always be here to help you with that. Every step of the way. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just know that you are enough. And you always will be." Ava looked up at him, her eyes still full of questions, but there was a flicker of something new in her gaze hope. Caleb smiled gently and pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. "You're my world, Ava. You've always been enough for me." Ava didn't say anything at first, but Caleb could feel her body relax in his arms. It was in these quiet moments that he realized just how far they had come, how much they had both changed. Caleb wasn't the same person he had been when he first met Ava. He had learned so much from her about patience, about love, and about the kind of father he wanted to be. And Ava, though still carrying the weight of her past, was beginning to understand that she was deserving of love and happiness. Over the next few months, things continued to improve. Ava became more comfortable with her life, with Caleb, and with the idea of a future that was no longer clouded by fear. She started to dream again, to make plans, and to imagine a life beyond the pain that had once consumed her. It was in these moments, these small victories, that Caleb realized how truly blessed he was. He had come into her life not to fix her, but to be with her, to be her protector, her father, and her family. And in return, Ava had given him something he never knew. He needed a purpose, a reason to look beyond his own achievements and into the heart of what truly mattered. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Ava turned to Caleb with a smile that was both shy and proud. "Daddy," she said, her voice full of quiet confidence, "I think I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to be happy." Caleb's heart swelled with emotion. It was the moment he had been waiting, for the moment when Ava, in her own time, had found the strength to let go of the past and embrace her future. He pulled her into a hug, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you, Ava," he whispered. "You've made it, and we're going to make it together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Caleb knew that no matter what came next, they would face it as a family. And that, he thought, was the greatest gift of all.